Is Meteor.js dead? If you've been in the JavaScript community for a while, you probably have seen this question. In forums, Reddit threads, interviews, someone always brings it up. And honestly, for a while, it was a fair question to ask. But today, we're going to answer it. We'll share with you the whole story from Meteor creation to what we are doing with it nowadays. So, spoiler, Meteor.js is not dead. In this episode of the Galaxy Crew podcast, I'll talk with Gabriel Gruba and Nacho Codonier, two members of Meteor's core team, and also Fred Maya, who is the CEO of Galaxy, the company that is behind Meteor's development nowadays. We're going to talk about where Meteor came from, what actually happened when MDG, the previous company that owned Meteor, walked away from it, and what this framework looks like today after years of quiet, serious work to bring it back. By the end of this episode, you have an answer and the full story behind Meteor. Let's get into it. Before we talk about the present of Meteor, all this work that we have been doing, I would like to go back to the past and talk about how Meteor was born and what happened to it during all these years. And before that, I would like you to briefly introduce yourselves and who you are in the Meteor history.
This is Nacho Codonier. I am from Valencia, Spain, and I have been using Meteor. I think it was the first time where I discovered Meteor in my case. It was in a local meetup here, and it was all about learn Meteor.js in less than 30 minutes. And I remember when I discovered Meteor those days, it completely blew me away because this tool has been a way to develop and focus on the products from the really beginning. And the idea that with a single piece of code, you can deploy with multi-platforms using a really very simple API and with zero configuration. All that gave me the idea to keep working with this framework until now, which I am helping into its maintenance and its expansion. I am working in the open source team, and we are delivering many features to demonstrate that Meteor is not dead. Maybe it was abandoned by the original parents, I would say, but was quickly adopted by a community that is loyal, proactive, and supports it. We are here to make it better.
I'm Gabriel. I'm from Brazil. First met Meteor in the pandemic, and then I knew Enrique, which is the CTO at the moment, Galaxy. He was like in the Twitter scene here in Brazil, and then I was like, yeah, I started checking out what he was doing, and he works in this company called Meteor, and I heard about it. And at some point, they opened a position there, and that's how I got really into Meteor. Before I just knew it was a thing, and then I got really into it, and that's how I started discovering the story. And at some point, I think I got in a meeting with Fred, and he told me, and I'll ask Fred to tell the story about how it was to use Meteor at that time, because that made me go like, oh, I really want to be there because it seems such a good framework to be part of the community, to use, and to get that feeling. And I only saw a similar feeling, and I would say similar because it's really hard to have this productivity. And again, I will give the mic to Fred because the way that he explained how it was to be at that time working on Meteor is such a nice thing to hear.
I am Frederico Maia. You can call me Fred. I am the CEO of Meteor.js and Galaxy. The first time I tried Meteor was in 2015 as well, so I think same as Nacho. I was doing a hiring test in a company, and I was a Java developer back then. I have written this app in Java, the hiring test app in Java. And then I've heard that their innovation department, they used Meteor for like new apps and this kind of stuff. What is that? So I look at the website, and at first I didn't get it. Is this, I don't know, to replace Angular? Like, let me try. So I just try it, and I fell in love immediately because what Meteor gave us back then, a full stack app, reactivity by default, one language on client side and backend side, and the productivity was insane. So I fell in love with the framework. Since then, I became advocate of Meteor. I created a group in my city. Back then, I was living in Goiânia, my hometown, and I created a group to teach Meteor and talk about Meteor.js. I created a course about Meteor.js. For me, it was the best framework ever. And then I joined this company, and we had like open tasks that people could, we had an open board where you could take any task, Java systems where I could take a task and start developing, and also Meteor tasks. So I started taking only Meteor tasks because it was like a pleasure to work with Meteor.js, and like the productivity was insane. So this was my first time trying it. And then I can mention two other things because I was pretty new at Meteor and I still could be very productive using it. I participated on to the Startup Weekend program, and it's a big one here in Brazil. I think it also exists in other countries. I won the third place with my team, and we were developing an app using Meteor.js. We had only a weekend to develop something and to test. At a certain point, the guys from the organization they asked us to stop developing it because we were delivering so much features that it would look suspicious to the judges. So like this was Meteor, like we were in a weekend shipping so much that they were like, okay, guys, that's enough because like they would think that you had the
Before
system
AI,
ready,
right?
before AI, before AI.
Way before
Imagine with AI.
AI.
With AI in 2 hours, I think it was completed. Yeah, and the other one is I also lived in Ireland before, and before I moved to Ireland, I developed a system to my cousin's company. They had hired a company to develop an app, and they were not happy with them. Like the guys were developing for almost a year, and they were not happy with the results and like with the experience that the customers was having with the app. And then we created an MVP for this company. My cousin and I, we spent 7 days creating an app, and then his boss was like impressed, and they immediately ended the contract with the outsourcing company that was developing that app and hired my cousin and I to develop. And like in a week, we had admin screens, we had apps running on Android and iOS. This was, I think, 2017, something like that. So the productivity that Meteor gives you is insane. And of course, that's a good to remember that this is before AI era. It was something completely different. And the reactivity was when people saw pages updating without like having to hit a refresh button. Oh my God, this is magic.
I think part of what make Meteor stand out from other alternatives in back on the day in 2012 when it was launched was that Meteor built together and glued together many tools and orchestrate the development of them. All the time that engineers dedicate technical efforts into combine library services, what is the best tool to use in each case, which database we should use or not. This was completely done in Meteor. And this is why Fred possibly did that productivity completely accelerated because Meteor provided that. And this was really beneficial for everyone to truly feel what a full stack framework is and just focusing on the products and the ideas, the prototypes that you want to deliver for the companies that you work on.
Is Meteor.js dead, guys? How many times have you heard this question?
Too many times. It's an everlasting change cycle. The software that we use today is completely different than it we were using in the past. And I would say at some point, even Meteor 3 is way different than Meteor 2. So in some ways, it's dead, but it's not dead. It's like we are here, we are still working on it. It's a completely different experience that follows the same spirit that we always had. It's a difficult conversation to have because you can say like, hey, I don't have the fibers thing no more, which is a bummer. I like the idea of not having to await things, but now we are like super into the node part of things, so it's super nice. It's a really good experience, and it resembles the first time we tested it. So yeah, it's a hard question to answer, but the TLDR is no, Meteor's not dead. The way that you knew it is different.
I agree it's different, but for me, I think it's an easy question to answer that it is not like I have written a blog post recently talking about how many releases we made, I think, in the past 5 years. We have released 30 versions of Meteor.js. We are shipping a lot. So Meteor 3 was a big release where Fibers was finally gone. After that, I think with the recent 3.4 and 3.5 versions. Those are the most significant releases that Meteor had in the past I don't know, 10 years. It's a lot. Our team is a small team currently, but we are shipping meaningful versions, meaningful releases, and Meteor is getting better and better in each release.
When you say like Meteor is dead, in this sense, like no, it's not dead because we have been working on it regularly. Has been someone actively pushing commits in the past, I don't know, 5 years, 6 years. So it's been like a while that we have been actively maintaining it. And not only maintaining it, but making better, adding features. So I would say like it's not dead in that sense. I guess that the answer is easier than we thought. I haven't thought on that sense, Fred, because I didn't know we had like 30 releases. Like, oh my god, yes, that it has been now 30 releases. So
Yeah, and also just to complement, we have thousands of apps running on Galaxy. So it's not like the core team is working on it, but nobody is using. So there are still a lot of companies using it, creating real apps. We have like real business, like generating real revenue every day using Meteor. So
One of the reasons why I called you guys up to record this episode is because recently I saw this video on a very popular YouTube channel called Fireship, and the video was entitled When Open Source Fails. One of the open source projects they talk about is Meteor. They say that Meteor was revolutionary. It was so ahead of its time. It had many different concepts that were ahead of everything that people were doing, but its popularity kind of faded away because it didn't stick with the community. So it gives the feeling that I feel like a lot of people have, that Meteor had this hype in the past and suddenly it got abandoned, or people didn't use it because it was not good enough, or it couldn't scale, or whatever. Many different. Just a second, guys. This guy. Just like they say in this video, there's a lot of people that have this impression that a Meteor like faded away, people stopped using it, its popularity just went down and nobody uses it anymore and it's dead, and that's why I keep listening to this question, is Meteor dead, is Meteor dead, is Meteor dead? Actually, this is one of the first questions I got when I started working in the company almost 2 years ago. I said, I'm going to work for Meteor.js, and people were like, oh, isn't this dead? I was like, no. And then I will tell them the story that Fred told me when I did the interview with him to join the company, and we're going to tell people here now. So I got my notes here, and we're going back to 2012. Meteor was launched in 2012 by Meteor Development Group. I think they had a different name at the beginning, but then it became MDG. They got some funding to work on Meteor, and the premise was real-time full-stack JavaScript framework with zero configuration. It was like very popular at the time, as you guys already said. And it was in a period of web development history where Node was still very new. JavaScript in the back end was like a new thing. People were discussing if we should use JavaScript in the back end or not. So yeah, it came like with this very strong premise and this very strong community as well. If you go to Meteor's YouTube channel and start rolling down to see the older videos that we have there, a lot of videos from 2013, I guess, to 16 or 17 something, of a lot of different conferences and in many different places around the world. What happened? I'd like to ask Fred, what happened to Meteor? Why it didn't stick?
I think that the main reason was because the investors, the VC companies behind MDG, they were not having return of investment in the time that they wanted. The company started pivoting to something else, to a new product. The product that they have created, they were actually trying to solve a scaling issue with Meteor.js. They heard about this new thing called GraphQL. They started testing it. They were promising to create DDP protocol version 2 and Meteor.js 2. Then they saw that they could create something bigger and find a place in the market where they could have customers in the corporate market. So the company ended up creating Apollo. It was great for them. I think in a business perspective, they made the right decision, but in a community perspective, it was really bad. I think the people that left Meteor, and I won't say that, oh, Meteor is the same and there are, I don't know, millions of companies or millions of apps are still today. Like, of course, Meteor is not the same as it was back in the day. The people that left Meteor, they were not wrong, because think about it, like if the owners are pivoting to something else, if the owners are not prioritizing a tool, why, if I'm a developer using that product, why I would keep using that. Of course, I should evaluate my options. At that point, many developers and companies, they started evaluating other options, and then they left Meteor. But Meteor still has a strong community behind it, people that are passionate about it and are still using Meteor nowadays. The community was, I think, the thing that when Tiny bought the company was one of the greatest assets from Meteor, because the community was still there. Like, of course, some people left, but a lot of people were still using, like they didn't want to leave Meteor because it was so great, it was so productive. And of course, when you have real businesses running using the framework, you don't just switch like overnight. You have to think about it and consider your options. So the community was still there. Galaxy hosting was still running thousands of apps. The company was profitable. Tiny, look at the company. Tiny really likes buying companies that has a community behind them. So there are many reasons that Tiny would look at Meteor with good eyes. The community was an asset, Galaxy was an asset, the company was profitable. So there was actually no reason to stop investing in the platform and in the framework. If not, investors are pressuring you to generate more and more and more money. So this is something that is also different now with Tiny. Like we are not backed by VCs. Of course, all the companies want and have to be profitable. And we are profitable since I joined the company at least. And as far as I know, since forever. Tiny want companies that are profitable, healthy, like we're not trying to, hire people and try to grow as fast as possible, but we want to grow in a certain pace and keep growing. Galaxy and the community are the reasons why Meteor is still here today.
This is something that I feel a lot of companies have a hard time to do. It's to build a community, to build a strong community. Meteor was able to build this very strong community that, despite the main company that supported it, pivoted, focused on other project, the community stayed. People stayed. A lot of people that we talk in the community that are part of our forums for more than 10 years and are still there, that are contributing, that are participating in creating content in our Discord and everywhere. So it's a very the next question I'm thinking about doing is a bit abstract maybe. Why do you guys think people stayed that long in the community? Is that just love for Meteor, or what are the other reasons? What do you think, Nacho?
I think the reason was that Meteor was not just a tool for many of us. It has behind a vision of what a full stack framework should be. And it also provided extra value in many areas. Even it can be opinionated at first. It allows you to make all the advanced implementations that you want, and it can scale into that. All these ideas, I think, was the reason why many people strongly believe in this framework. I think everyone that has experience to work with Meteor has had like a fingerprint on their professional experiences, because when MDG abandoned the product, many of us, including me, tried to see alternatives, and we couldn't see anything similar. You know what happened when I tried something else? I always was thinking the way Meteor covered it, the minimum of isomorphic code, all that what happens with reactivity and the possibility to scale an application like that. If you go to another framework, you need to implement that from scratch. And those days was something that I was not able to see it gone. I just wanted to ensure that this was going to be also the possibility for the future, a viable option. And I believe this could be one of the reasons that maybe members of the community stayed loyal into this Meteor framework and tried to produce the momentum in the future.
And I feel like there's also something that maybe we haven't talked about is that there's a lot of Meteor apps in production. There's a lot of people in the community there that are interested in maintaining Meteor active and evolving because they're using Meteor in their companies, they're using Meteor in their products, they're using Meteor in production and solving real people's problems. And sometimes we forget that we don't need to be the most hyped framework to be in production solving people's problems, right? Because at the end of the day, the user doesn't really care what's behind their app. No one cares, to be honest. Going back to Meteor's history, 2019, Tiny acquired Meteor and Galaxy. There was this huge work that we had to do around modernizing the framework. Let's talk a bit more about that. What happened? Why was Meteor stuck in the past at this time, guys?
So I will keep it short and let Gabriel Nacho complement. The main reason was because of fibers, and not because of fibers itself, but because Node.js released a version where fibers was not compatible with Node.js anymore. We had to make a decision. Back in the days, we had a few options that people were discussing. One of them was to try to convince Node.js team to revert that change, and with that we could keep using fibers. It was, I think, optimization, and they didn't want to lose what they have achieved with that change. That option, we soon realized that it wasn't really an option. So we started discussing, okay, should we keep a fork Node.js version and then we can revert the change and keep maintaining this Node.js fork version? That was a really bad option. One of the things that kept Meteor kind of distant from other frameworks and from the Node.js ecosystem was because Meteor was a bit closed its option and in its decisions. If we did that, we would be even more distant. We would be even more far from the JavaScript patterns. The other option was to remove fibers. That was a huge work. And in the beginning, we knew that it was big, it was a lot of effort, but I think we had no idea of how big was to remove fibers from core of Meteor.js and also the impact in all the other packages. I think removing fibers was the big thing that we needed to do to keep Meteor alive. I don't think that was an option to modernize the framework, but to keep Meteor alive.
Yeah, I guess the fibers one is the biggest one because Meteor, and for those listening, Meteor was created in the moment that async await was not established. So it was not a thing yet, and we had fibers, and it kind of worked in similar languages. I don't think C# does it, but I think Java does it. There's no await in Java, I guess. I don't know. Every function can have a asynchronous operation, but it will always look like it's synchronous. That thing was like one of the bases of Meteor, and maybe one of the reasons why it was so simple because you didn't have to think about async awaiting things and try catching. That was a huge change. And I remember when we first tried to find where it started using fibers, like in the sense of the code itself, it was like, yeah, it's everywhere. It's a thing that we based on top of. And not only that, because Meteor ships with Node, it's inside our Node because this fibers thing isn't only in the code, but it's also a plugin that you add to your own node. So it was even like such a deep change that it required rebuilding a lot of building blocks that we had. So we had to skip making this plugin thing we did in our node. We had to rethink how we loaded much of the plugins that we use, the packages that we use. We had to do a lot of like this rethinking of our model. At the end, we got it, but it took a while because we thought it was like, hey, let's just make everything async await, but then we have like loading problems. Things were supposed to be loaded sequentially, and they were not. And now you can think of how big this change was.
And how long did we take to make this change, guys? To finally be free from fibers?
I don't remember exactly how long it was, but it was over 2 years, the first version. Put that in my blog post. We had over 2,300 commits, huge. And I remember like we were changing so many things, so many places that it was kind of hard to believe that would work, the end of it. So there are many developers from the community that are like, will this be ever released? Like, are you sure? Like, this is so big and At the end, I think the result was great. Like we started releasing async versions before Meteor 3, simple, small apps. Upgrading was really simple. And of course, depending on the size of the project, the upgrade can be really a big task. Maybe when this episode is out, I will have released already a blog post talking about how we have migrated Atmosphere.js that was running on version 2, I don't know, last week. And using AI today, it took me 12 hours, something like that, to migrate Atmosphere from version 2 to version 3 with the help of AI. Because before AI, I tried to do that in the past. I remember I spent a week trying to do this upgrade and I gave up. Like there were so many issues, so many errors that was like, okay, I will add this branch here and I will try it back later. I never touched that branch again. And now with AI, I restart everything. And in this blog post, I talk about the whole process of how I did it. I think with AI now, you can easily migrate Medium apps as well, version 2 to version 3.
And if you're enjoying this episode, I'd like to say that the best way to support Meteor development is to host your applications on Galaxy. Galaxy is the best cloud platform for Meteor apps. And I have some discount for you to get started. Create your account on our website and use the coupon GalaxyCrew60 to have $60 in credits to host your apps in Galaxy. So yeah, let's go back to the conversation. When I joined the company almost 2 years ago in 2024, we were in this moment where we were going to release this big version of Meteor, Meteor 3. We did this big event at the time called the Renaissance of Meteor.js, where we did like a series of live events and we talked about this new version of Meteor, what it meant for the community and for developers. Since then, we have been working on a lot of bunch of cool new stuff. What the state of Meteor nowadays, guys? What are we working on now?
The old colleagues was saying related with the Meteor 3 and the async work that enable us to continue evolving the framework. Was the baseline to be able to do things in the future. Of course, async await was something that touches every part, and this was the hardest technical to navigate through those places and to adapt. But after this, with all the knowledge from the different areas, we were able to specifically get into the different areas we wanted to improve, and the community and other companies were reaching us in order to have more benefits and better results on different sites. One example of it is all that has to be with bundle. We have been delivering through several versions. One of the critical parts that every member of the community, including companies, were agreed on was about the bundler experience.
On the bundler side, I think we can. The thing is, companies are reaching out. This was a really long wish from the community and for many people to make the bundler better. In some ways, the developer experience better. So and with this change, I think, I don't know the exact number, but we got a huge number of decrease in time. So it's faster to develop. The changes that you make are faster to be seen. We had a lot of like small things in the between.
I have the numbers here. We have 75% faster builds, 9% faster rebuilds, and 50% smaller bundles. And that, of course, depends on your project. You could have more or less.
That alone, it's a huge change. And I would say it's in the similar way as the Fibers one. Because the Fibers one, people saw some productivity change. They felt it easier to develop because now they don't have to think about Fibers things. They can just use a sync await. Node got better because it upgraded Node from 14 to 20, and now we're in 22 and soon 24. We got some upgrades there, but this one is insane, right? It's a huge number. On our path forward, we have chain stream changes. Meteor, as I said, it has a lot of, I would not say legacy parts, but they have some things that were built in a long time ago. One of them was the uplog implementation, because at the time, the best way to have real time using MongoDB was listening to the uplog. And for those listening, uplog is basically a table, a thing that you can hear, and you can see every changes that are being made. And if you're listening closely and use a converter, you can do changes to your data set in real time just by hearing what's going on in that table. And now we're using the de facto feature from MongoDB, that's the change streams API, that will enable us to do this, achieve the same thing as we did with uplog, but now with a more stable and easy to use API. Because uplog, guess what? It's a secret implement, not a secret thing, but it's a private thing from MongoDB.
It's a private API.
Yeah, so it can change and they not have to tell people about it. And we had in the past to do an upgrade, do changes on it, and it's quite annoying. It's not stable, and so that's the thing that's on our radar. Yeah, and getting better and better and better now that we are like off of these legacy things. These legacy parts are getting done. We are now introducing the new things. For example, I guess Nacho can tell more about it, but we are planning on having this year a version where we can have out of the box capacitor. I always miss capacitor and Cordoba, especially because both are with C. I think it's capacitor, right, Nacho? One of our things in our next steps. So our roadmap is looking really good. Want to say something about it, Nacho?
As my colleagues were saying, the Meteor fibers migration was the baseline to achieve anything else that was going to come next. One of the things that our community of companies using Meteor, developers working with these frameworks, everyone was agreed that one of the areas that we needed to work out was the bundler. The bundler optimization that we did encompasses several phases. We wanted to ensure that we were going to touch not only what Meteor already is, the bundler itself, and try to get the most out of it, but also having another integrations of a modern tool through delegation in order to unlock more possibilities and offload maintenance. And this is what we did with the recent AirSpec integration. With the AirSpec integration, any member of our community was able to finally see how the development experience was improved, how the bundle size were lower of their applications, and also how they could basically adopt any bundler feature that is available in the wider ecosystem. Our fibers migration was basically our way to be able to match to the JavaScript modern standards and tool integration. But this is not only what we plan. Our original idea is to be sure that whatever has been doing Meteor from the really beginning of the times is now, but is done in a more optimal way and also in a more standardized way. And this is the reason why we are going to introduce as well Capacitor.js as a replacement of Cordova, as we really believe that Meteor is a really strong tool in order to make any web application to be produced into several multi-platform contexts like Android, iOS, even desktop. We are going to ensure we integrate the modern tools that are out there in order to get these gains.
What is the future of the framework, guys? What are we thinking about building in Meteor in the next, 5 years? Is that too much?
We have this feeling that we need to make it ready for the future. We're still like replacing old parts. So as I said, capacitor for capacitor instead of Cordoba, the all plug changes. I do feel like because we are in this AI hype, maybe we should have something AI ready for it. I'm still not sure what we're gonna do. Maybe that's a thing. Maybe we make an evolution in methods, but at the same time, everyone knows how to use it. Even AI know how to use the methods. Why change it? It's a hard question to answer. What I can say is that what we aim to do for the future is to maintain the philosophy of Meteor. It's the de facto full stack framework, and we aim to keep it as modern as possible based on the time it's been used. That's what we can promise, like maybe next year they launch a new thing to replace capacitor, and that's all we'll focus on making the a mobile experience the best possible. Maybe they launch a new bundler system that's even better. That's what we'll aim to do. We'll aim to make the best developer experience for making full stack apps, real-time full stack apps.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer. Like we are keeping the philosophy and then trying to bring Meteor to 2026. That's why we're replacing some tools and we are not doing the same mistakes. Like I know that we're using our spec, Nacho try to first think about, okay, what if we have to replace our spec for something else? And then we are kind of prepared to do things like that. With the capacitor integration, I think Cordova was built too much in the core of Meteor. And on this new integration, we want to keep things a bit more organized, to have a good interface between the tools, and then again, to be easier to change to something else if we need. And I think we will keep solving old issues. Like people talk a lot about scaling issues. I think with change strings now, we will solve many problems. As you said, like 5 years in the future is too much, but I think the next big thing that we are doing a POC, we're testing, we're seeing what is possible is to have Meteor's reactivity not tied to MongoDB. This is something that people ask a lot about it. The core team is working with some proof of concepts to try start decoupling the framework from MongoDB. Yeah, maybe in few years or even less, we will not be tied to MongoDB anymore. MongoDB could be one of the options that we would have database for Meteor.js applications.
All right, guys, is there anything you'd like to say about Meteor that I haven't asked?
Not about the framework itself, but to the community. I just want to say thanks to everyone. Because of the ones who stayed, that's why Meteor is still here, Meteor is still alive. That's why we are working hard to give you the best developer experience possible. And just want to say thanks to the community, to core team, and to everyone that is still here for Meteor and wants to see Meteor be a successful tool.
So for the ones who left, I think your work has been part of what Meteor is today. No matter if you work it publicly by creating materials, tutorials, atmosphere packages on the past, or you participated in the forums by bringing up new concepts or ideas. Your work has been an inspiration for everyone that has stayed in Meteor. And now that we have overcome many of the limitations that Meteor had on the past, that maybe those were the reasons for you to left, now maybe it's a good moment to take another look into it and to continue building with that framework that you love it to work from the start. And for those who have not arrived yet, Meteor is still here, is a valid option as any other framework that is out there. But what Meteor is outstanding in comparison with others is that it is a mature and battle-tested full stack framework that allows you, just by implementing a web application, to produce real-time and multi-platform applications in a really self-configured way. But not only this, if it can scale well for real-time capabilities, but also for any bundle configuration you might need. Nowadays, this framework has unlocked the potential by including modern tools from the wider ecosystem. So now you can use this framework to just focus on what matters at the end of the day, which is the development of your ideas, the products, and what you are doing in your company. So please consider Meteor as an option, because nowadays we are going to not only allow you to do what we have delivered lately, we are planning to unlock more possibilities for you to not worry about linking and assembling tools together.
Okay, so I'd like to ask you, do you think Meteor is that? And I know the answer. I'd like to invite you to try Meteor, and if you are not a member of the community yet, please join our forums, our Discord. The links are here in the description of this episode. And I hope you have enjoyed the story. If you have any questions or would like to connect, we're here for you. So thank you very much for listening, for watching until the end. Don't forget to subscribe, to hit the like button. And if you're listening just on Spotify, follow the podcast and share it with people that think that Meteor is that. See you soon. Bye.